Okay, here's a very interesting article that we should all keep our eyes on, because they're claiming that they found life in deep, deep, deep Earth in this article, and they're claiming that they found it inside of olivine rocks. And I say that that is not correct in my research, and I have done extensive amounts of research on mud fossils, and mud fossils contain tendons, and the tendons are made from olivine in most cases. And it depends on how they're fossilized, but in most cases the tendon turns into olivines. And the olivines have plagioclases in them, and I'll show you that in a second. Now here's what they're claiming. It says, now experts have managed to isolate the cells from a few of the samples and will examine them in detail in the laboratory. This is what I want to know, because when they start examining them, they're going to find out that they're not microbial organisms, they are cells from an organism, primarily blood and bodily fluids. Right? I have them here, and I have had them DNA tested. Right? Currently, scientists only know that these are microbial cells. Now, that's microbes. No, they are not. They are cellular material from creatures that were petrified, and that cellular material is locked into what they call iron complexes, in metal complexes. And hemoglobins contain vast quantities of iron, or vice versa, and inside of that complex is DNA and cellular materials. When that stuff gets fossilized, what happens is it gets surrounded by these little things, other molecules, and these other molecules, they call them ligands, if you want to just know the terms. And the ligands are just like a cyst. They surround that metal complex containing what they call chelated metals, which contain cellular material. And they will never, ever, ever get destroyed unless they are hit with acids or some extreme pHs, or they are possibly extremely combusted. But there are meteorites that are hitting the Earth that I can guarantee you have testable DNA in them. It certainly looks to me, I would certainly take a look at them if I had the chance. And the chance is certainly available. They're cut right open, and the DNA is just literally falling out on the floor. And I think it should be tested. I mean, everybody, oh, it's living out of space. Well, it's right there in your hands. Why don't you check it? There's a gigantic lung down at the World Trade Center, I believe, that's where it is. I have pictures of it. I'll show you in a second. It's huge, and it's definitely a lung. Now let's get back to this. This olivine thing that they found life in is not, olivine is tendons. And I'm going to show you that in a second, and I'm going to show you under a microscope, and I'm going to show you 3 or 4 cases of them, and they have veins and arteries in them, and they are not just rocks. They are from life, and contained in that olivine is sequestered metals, because there's blood, and I will show you that too. So now, here's what they're saying. They're saying that these cells are microbial, sooner to tell whether these are bacteria or archaea. Well, they are not either one of those. They are cellular bodily fluids. Now, mantle rock contains a mineral called olivine. Absolutely. The earth is made of it, virtually, which turns into serpentine when it comes into contact with water at low temperatures. That is incorrect. Serpentine is the wavy pattern of tendons, and I will show you that in a second. As a matter of fact, here's one right here. This is the kind that, this is called selenite. It's another, that is a petrified tendon. And they go into those wavy patterns. I'll show you all kinds of stuff about this. Anyway, this produces hydrogen and methane. The gases provide an energy source for these microorganisms, so they don't need sunlight. That is not the case. I'm not sure whether that sort of stuff will provide food for animals that don't need sunlight, but that is not the case here. Said Berlusconi Green, suggesting that the cells found were somehow capable of using gases within the rock, and that is not the case. It's absolutely not. If it's olivine, it's a tendon. If it's in a tendon, it's blood. And if it's blood, it is cellular material from creature life. All right? in order to carry out their metabolic process. Well, that's just not the case. And nobody expects this, because nobody expects the Earth to be alive, but the Earth is alive. And I'm going to show you amounts of evidence that can't be denied. And DNA, I have 3 tests of DNA. I have 7 CAT scans. I have laboratory analysis. I've recreated the process in the lab. It's an electrical process done in mud, in fine silicates. It plates the creature. The creature is sequestered. Everything inside is only now subject to invasion by the tiniest molecules, which is OH minus, which is hydroxyl, I believe is the name of it, hydroxyl. It attacks and destroys bone, and it destroys calcium and phosphates. That's the bone, and you end up with no bone, and you end up with all kinds of mineral interactions and crystals and so forth with inside the bone and inside the cellular materials, because every bit of your body has different types of chemicals here and there, and they interact differently with what comes in contact with them. It's called solvomorphism. Solvents morphing the petrified creature into all kinds of different chemicals and crystals. And as this happens, the volatile organics sublimate away, they go out of the body, and they leave. And what you're left with is, some of the blood will stay. And it depends on the compaction. And nothing is, there's no single flavor here. All kinds of things. Sometimes some of them are turned purple with amethyst colors, and some of them are vanadium. They turn blue, and some of them have all kind of ferrous, deep red ferrous, and they're metals primarily. It's the angular nature of the crystalline structure of metals and minerals that give off these colors. And whatever else gets out of there is evaporated out, sublimated, they call it. Same thing as evaporation, really. And at a certain temperature, you've lost all the volatile organic compounds, which is the gooey stuff inside your body. After that, you have the structural components, the keratins, the collagens, minerals, metals, and that's what's left. Those become invaded. There's all kinds of names for this, but think about it this way. One combines with another. When you want to know the names, it's nucleophilic reaction, that's invasions, and there's electrophiles and nucleophiles, and then there's all kinds of funny names they have. But what happens is you've got some chemicals want electrons, and some of them don't need electrons, they want to give them up. Everybody's trying to get stable. And they just keep working it out until they end up getting to the most stability. That's just the way it works. And that ends up being your SiO2s and your silicon carbides and carborundum and all that stuff, which is the silicon is 50 times more prevalent in your skin than it is in any other part of your body. So the silicon, Si, bonds with O2, SiO2, in the percolates in the water, and that literally plates just exactly the way you plate a cheap ring, because there is electricity in the ground. Nobody takes that into account either. Those are called spontaneous electrical potentials, and they are fully understood. And the University of Alberta, Canada, they know all about this. And it happens, the finer the mud, the more the electricity. That's the nature of it. It sort of puts them into a pattern of pluses and minuses. It's just the way it works. Anyway, this is what the story is. And the Earth is alive, and olivine has blood in it, and the blood is from creatures, not from organisms. They're not individual organisms and the amoebas and all that business. No, they're cellular materials that comes out of creature's body, blood, organism. All right, I'm going to show you some more evidence. All right, here's the iron meteorites that come into the Earth, smash into the Earth, and there's the red blood, there's the vein, and this had smelted. It must have been something that had an extreme amount of iron in it and metals, and when it comes through the atmosphere, it smelts, and it does a festering smelt, not into like a glob of a bubble, but it forces the organics out, and it leaves the metals and minerals, and that's why you see this crystallization, and you see the blackness around here, and this is what it is. This is how these things it was originally some kind of a creature at some point. It was, let's say it's dead, floating around space. I have no clue. Which I can tell you right now, that thing was alive at some point. And what happens is these blood is in metals, and the metals form what they call chelated complexes, and they get chelated by these little things that wrap right around them, like a balloon wraps right around something, and it sequesters it, they call it. They're called ligands, and they attach around these metal complexes. And within this metal complex is the hemoglobins. Within the hemoglobins is the DNA and all that business, the cellular life. And that is what they found in that olivine stuff that came up from deep in the earth. That is not new organisms. That is petrified, chelated, organic, cellular, bodily tissue, bloods. And that's what I'm saying. And if they look at it, that's what they're going to find. But I'm unlikely they're going to look at it. All right, this is in, I believe it's in Utah somewhere. And there's always a vein and an artery together. And this, I am saying, is the artery, which has the red blood. And you can see it here. And it depresses, it goes inside. You see that the red blood is always a cavity, and the red is in the inside, and then the outside was your vascular tubing. Now, if you come back, then there's always a red one and there's always a black one, because you have veins and you have arteries. And here comes the black one. And here it is right there. Now, let's come back and see it. Here it is here, and here it is here. They're always in very close proximity, because your oxygenated blood comes in and through the arterial, and your pinched off blood, which is in the vein, turns black, because it doesn't have any oxygen left in it. I mean, this is crazy. It's the entire Earth, but you see what I see, and I'm sure this is correct, because I mean, I have copious amounts. And you see, these always stick up in the air. So you got the red and you got the black, and they're everywhere. And they pinch. The vein is, what it does is it pinches off, so that blood can't go back the wrong way. I have no explanation other than it says this in the ancient text, that the universe is alive, and there's no question in my mind that they're 100% right. Comet 67P totally is a tendon. Meteorites coming through the space, they have veins and arteries in them, and you can take out the blood right today and test it if you want, because it comes through chelated, which means it's surrounded and protected literally forever in any conditions other than, I mean, there's certain things that'll hurt it, but certainly acid will destroy that. But other than that, deep inside these meteorites coming into Earth, that's not going to kill that blood. There'll be DNA in there. And I had DNA in all the samples that I sent, and I had 3 DNA tests, they're all positive. So we're just missing the boat on this. All right, here's another picture of that lung. And, I mean, it's just so obvious. Now, why would these holes be? What would make these little tiny penetrations? This is a complete vascular network. That's how the lung works. You've got huge pockets, and then you've got tiny little jumpers that jump between them. And it's I have it in all mine. Now, this one here has literally been DNA tested. And this one here is 100% human DNA. And it is, that's where the bloody invested area is. There's this up at the top, invest, and then over here it's hard to see, but there's a circular airway where your airway goes in. That's the pattern of and this is the fabric, which is called fascia, and it's tunica. And you see the red and the black and all this business. That would all evaporate off of there, and you would end up with metals if this came through like a rock through space. That's what's going to happen. It's just the way it works. All right, this is Mount Kalish, and a fellow named Carl sent this to me asking about, I do all this research on mud fossils, and the Earth is alive, and anyway, he wanted to know if I had any ideas on this, and I do. And this Mount Kalish is it appears to be a vein, and the remnants of a vein, and that would have been the arterial supply. So you have your vein here and your arterial supply. Now the veins are always black and dark because the blood is used up. Now this could also be part of this. This could be the arterial side, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. This here, you see this? this thing's sticking straight up in the air. That's not flat. And these scoops are coming up to it, which this would have been the blood. See this here? That would have been the vein, the vein around it, and inside is the blood. And they have clamps that clamp off, and they pinch just like that, and they pinch the blood off, and you end up with these pinch marks. I've seen them before, and it's strange, but it's true. And that would have been the vein side, which has the O3 blood, O2 blood. One of the oxygens is used. This one's the lighter color. See, this is always darker, and this is the lighter color, which is the oxygenated blood, the O3. All right, here's the headline here. Why are, this is Science and Mathematics, Yahoo Answers. Now, 10 points. Why are olivine and calcium-rich plagioclase often found together in igneous rocks? Well, olivine is the tendons, and plagium-rich plagioclase is the tendon enthesis points. That's why the calcium-rich plagioclases are connective tissue. Calcium-rich is exactly what collagen number 1 is, which is exactly what connective tissues are. And I have them in copious quantities here, and I can show them on, and they actually lay together one on top of each other like shingles. They look like pine cones. And that is what the connective tissue is, and that's what gives us flexibility. It's like a Chinese finger trap looking stuff.